There's a moment before the music starts, when the lights drop and the air changes. Thousands of people hold the same breath at once. Strangers pressed shoulder to shoulder. Phones rise like a constellation of tiny screens. And when the first note hits, the room explodes into something bigger than itself. Noise becomes unity. Movement becomes rhythm. And for a few hours, nothing exists outside that arena. You are surrounded. You are safe. You are part of something too large to fail.
But safety inside a crowd is a facade. You believe someone would notice if something went wrong. You think cameras are watching and that security means protection. But when the music is loud enough, when the lights are bright enough, and when thousands of voices drown out doubt, you stop asking who controls the door behind the stage. In 5 months, 11 women walked into arenas like this and never walked out. No footage of the crime. No witnesses stepping forward. No messages explaining where they went. Just silence after the encore.
This is Echoes of Evidence crime thriller podcast, The Last Encore.
Episode 1, Backstage.
A concert feels like safety in numbers. Thousands of strangers packed shoulder to shoulder. Lights so bright they erase the shadows. Music so loud it drowns out doubt. You believe nothing truly bad can happen in a room that alive. You believe if something did, someone would see it. Someone would hear it. Someone would stop it. But sometimes, the most dangerous places are the ones built on trust. The places where authority is assumed and movement goes unquestioned. In 5 months, 11 women walked into arenas filled with light and left without a trace. No fights, no screams, no witnesses stepping forward to say, "I saw something." Just absence where a person should have been.
This wasn't a serial predator lurking in parking lots. And it wasn't a stranger pulling someone into a van. It was something way quieter. Structured. Repeated. 11 cities, 11 encores. The same narrow window of chaos. The same blind spot behind the stage. A tour that moved like a machine, carrying sound and spectacle across North America, and hiding something inside its machinery. For months, no one connected the disappearances, because no one was looking at the system. They were looking at the spotlight, and the spotlight was never the problem.
The first thing you feel at a Static Divide show isn't the music, it's the pressure. The crowd becomes one body, pushing forward in tiny, constant movements, like the building itself is breathing. Phones lift, hands lift, the lights drop, and the room changes personality. Suddenly, you're not in an arena. You're inside a pulse. The band hits the stage, and the sound is physical. It shakes your ribs, blurs your sense of time. People scream because everyone else is screaming. Nobody's thinking about exits, or corridors, or what happens behind curtains. That's the point. For 2 hours, the world narrows to one place, the stage.
A tour isn't chaos. It's controlled. Trucks move on schedule. Crews move with purpose. Badges are scanned. Doors? Well, they're open when they're supposed to be and stay shut when they're not. From the seats, it looks like music and lights. From the stage, a sea of faces. But behind the curtain, it's all about who has permission and when. A network of people who make sure nothing interrupts the show. And inside that network are spaces that no one ever thinks about. corridors and checkpoints that exist because they're trusted. Not hidden, just unquestioned. And when that music gets loud enough, that trust disappears into the noise.
The encore is where logic breaks. People who are polite strangers start moving like they're trying to merge into the same square foot of air. The stage lights become a storm. Strobes, smoke, beams sweeping outward, never inward. It's the moment everyone remembers later. The final chorus, the last drum hit, the singer leaning into the noise like it's a prayer. But the encore is also the moment the building stops being monitored the way you think it is. Attention shifts. Staff brace for exit rush. Security watches the crowd, not the wings. The arena becomes a magic trick. Everyone's eyes pull to the same hand.
And if you were going to hide something in plain sight, you'd hide it in the encore. Not mid-set, not during opening acts, not after house lights rise when people start counting friends and checking pockets. During the encore, you can make a person disappear without anyone realizing it for minutes, sometimes hours. Because the crowd is still roaring, because the air is still shaking, because people assume she'll catch up. In 11 cities, the disappearances didn't scatter, they clustered in the window. The exact same slice of time, repeated like a ritual. "11 women, 5 months, 11 cities. Chicago, Denver, Atlanta, Dallas, Phoenix, Vancouver, Toronto, Nashville, Boston, San Diego, and Minneapolis. Different lives, different reasons for being there. Some went with friends. Some went alone. Some were diehard fans. Others just chasing a night that felt bigger than their week. They bought merch. They took photos. They stood close enough to the stage that the music didn't sound like music anymore. It sounded like weather. And then they were gone. No dramatic scene, no viral clip, just the slow dawning realization the next morning that someone never came home. If it had been one city, it would have been a tragedy. 2 cities? A coincidence. But 11 cities becomes a shape, a pattern that moves. And patterns are what investigators live for, because patterns don't care about your feelings. They're cold. They repeat. They tell you where to look. The problem is that no one department saw all 11. Not at first, anyway. Each case stayed local, sealed inside its own paperwork and grief. The tour kept rolling. The venues kept hosting. The crowds kept screaming. And the map didn't exist until someone finally pinned the dates side by side.
Clean is the wrong word, but it fits. There's no message saying, "I'm going backstage." No text sent in excitement. No selfies with a pass. No wish me luck joke to a friend. No witnesses saying, "I saw her leave with someone." The women vanished like the arena swallowed them and refused to spit out the proof. Families searched their last photos for clues. A blurry light beam, a shoulder in the crowd, a smile that doesn't know what's coming.
And there's no surveillance footage of the crime itself. Not because cameras don't exist, because the important spaces aren't covered the way the public spaces are. Cameras watch entrances, exits, concession fights, and parking garage lanes. But backstage arteries, you know, those narrow corridors beside the stage wing, they're treated as secure internal zones, trusted by default, which means the moment that matters, the moment someone crosses a threshold, doesn't live on video. It lives in what isn't recorded, in a missing timestamp, in a gate that opened because the system assumed it should.
Control to all units, be advised, with reports of a break-in in progress. Suspects may be still in the premises, backup requested.
The first reports are always the same. She was at a concert. We got separated. Her phone stopped answering. Parents insist their daughters would never vanish. Friends replay the night in fragments. Where they stood, who went to get the drinks, who left early, and who said see you at the car. The arena staff offers sympathy and shrugs toward policy. The band's crew is already gone. The parking lot cameras show vehicles leaving, headlights slipping into the night like nothing happened. A missing person case begins in the quiet after all the noise.
And missing person cases have gravity. They pull time inward. Hours become whole days. Small details become obsessions. But to law enforcement, a single missing person report after a major event can look like hundreds of other nights. Miscommunication, intoxication, someone leaving with someone they didn't tell their friends about. That assumption is what the pattern feeds on. It buys time. It softens urgency. It keeps the search local, small, and late. By the time anyone thinks to connect it to a tour schedule, the convoy is already 2 states away.
The map finally comes together. It doesn't feel like discovery. It feels like being punched by a fact you cannot know. 11 pins on a route. 11 disappearances that follow the band's calendar more faithfully than any other fan could. It's not just the cities. It's the timing. The encore window. The stage wing proximity. The way each case has the same emptiness where evidence should be. A pattern doesn't prove guilt, but it proves design. And design means someone is thinking.
Investigators begin where everyone else does, with the band. The faces on the posters, the performers with the fame, the access, the power. They review backgrounds, travel schedules, hotel bookings, and meet and greets. On the surface, it makes sense, but there's a flaw in that theory. Performers are visible. Their movements are documented. Their time is accounted for down to the minute. The real control of a show doesn't sit under the spotlight. It lives behind it. The band may be the face of the tour, but the control is backstage. And the people who hold it aren't the ones the crowd chants for.
Every arena has a space the crowd never thinks about. A narrow strip just off the stage where the lights don't quite reach. It's practical, dim, constantly in motion. The stage wing corridor exists for speed. Equipment rolls past close enough to brush your shoulder. Crew members in black headsets move with quiet urgency, speaking in codes that only they understand. It isn't glamorous. It isn't mysterious. It's simply operational. And because it feels ordinary, it's trusted. Everyone there is assumed to belong. No one questions a badge in that hallway. That trust becomes the blind spot. Not a broken camera. Not a glitch in the system. Just a shared belief that the people behind the curtain are supposed to be there.
This corridor is controlled during showtime by touring security. the traveling team hired by management, not the venue. Their job? Access flow. Who can cross? Who can't? What doors stay shut and what doors open without delay? They carry authority the venue won't challenge during a live performance. If a master access override triggers, the system logs the action but doesn't demand a reason. It's built to obey, built to keep the show running. And in 11 cities, that obedience becomes the cleanest hiding place in the building.
Traveling security isn't one guard. It's a system that moves with the tour like a shadow. Same faces, same routines, same quiet dominance over thresholds. They aren't there to be noticed. They're there to make sure nothing interrupts the performance. And when your job is no interruptions, you learn how to remove problems without creating scenes. The disappearances don't leave screaming witnesses because the system isn't built for screaming. It's built for smoothness, for flow, for keeping everything looking normal from the seats.
Investigators find something that feels small until it doesn't. One guard receiving hazard adjustments after certain shows. Not every show. Not random. After the same nights, women vanished. Money disguised as policy. A clean label for a dirty purpose. The payments route through touring administration, through approvals that look legitimate on paper. The band remains the public suspect because they're visible. But visibility isn't control. Doors are control. Movement is control. And somebody with authority, has been paying for those doors to open at exactly the right moment.
The public needs a face. When 11 women disappear around the same tour, people don't look at spreadsheets or freight logs. They look at the stage. The drummer becomes a center of speculation. Elevated, sweating under lights, scanning the crowd between fills. Slow motion clips circulate online. Freeze frames, zoom ins. The internet builds its villain from pixels and assumptions. It feels right. It feels cinematic. A performer choosing from above. A predator hiding behind applause. The story spreads because it's simple. And simple stories are easier to hold than complicated truths.
Detectives examine the performers first, because that's where the noise is. They review itineraries, hotel check-ins, and backstage access rules. They reconstruct movements minute by minute. But the deeper they look, the more controlled everything appears. The band's time is managed, their access limited, their proximity monitored, and something about that control doesn't fit the pattern of the disappearances. The people on the stage create the spectacle, but they don't manage the doors. The real leverage in a live show doesn't sit behind a drum kit. It sits wherever access can be granted without question. And that authority rarely stands under bright lights.
In fan-shot footage, there's always someone in the periphery. A shape near the truss, motionless, observing. He doesn't react to the music, doesn't sing along, doesn't move with the crowd's rhythm. He stands where the light fades into utility, where production ends and logistics start. No one watches him because he looks like he belongs. He looks like authority, like part of the structure that makes everything possible. But in 11 cities, during 11 encores, he stands in nearly the same place.
The tour manager travels with the band from city to city. He controls the credentials. approves the freight shifts, and directs security assignments. If something needs to move quickly, it's his signature that makes it happen. He is the person venues defer to when showtime pressures rise. During encores, when chaos peaks, he positions himself in the wing, the one place where the stage, the corridor, and the first rows of the crowd intersect. Not in the spotlight, not backstage in a trailer, in the seam between spectacle and access.
Access logs don't show crimes. They show behavior. In those 11 cities, during the encore window, a master override triggers within seconds of peak crowd surge. It's not unusual on its own. Live shows are unpredictable. Sometimes doors need to open without delay. But repetition changes meaning. 11 triggers, 11 nights. Same slice of time. It isn't random enough to ignore, but not dramatic enough to alarm anyone reviewing a single report. The override doesn't scream. It whispers. It blends into the natural friction of live performance. A door held open, a route adjusted, a momentary bypass. But when you stack those whispers together, they begin to form a sentence. A quiet, repeated instruction buried inside the noise. And once investigators hear that sentence, they can't unhear it.
The system records the override, but not the reason behind it. That's intentional. It's built for speed, not second guessing. If someone with the right clearance issues the command, the door's open. No questions, no pause. The log notes that it happened, not why. On its own, each override looks routine. Just another adjustment during a live show. But stack them side by side and the pattern begins to pulse. Not a musical beat, a procedural one. The overrides hit at the exact moment the crowd is loudest, when lights are flashing and when attention is fixed forward, when no one is looking sideways. The door opens at the height of the distraction. That kind of precision doesn't happen by chance. It's timing refined over repetition. It's someone who understands not just how the access system responds, but how human focus fails.
The payments look harmless at first glance. Hazard adjustment, operational bonus, administrative language that blends into payroll cycles and accounting software. But they align with specific tour dates, specific cities, specific nights, and always the same guard. It's subtle enough to pass internal review, small enough not to trigger automatic audits, but consistency is its own form of evidence. 11 adjustments, 11 cities, 11 women gone. The numbers don't accuse, they accumulate. They sit quietly in columns, waiting for someone to notice they are breathing in the same rhythm as the disappearances.
The security guard travels with the tour, controls the stage wing corridor, coordinates perimeter shifts during encores. His job requires movement and authority, both of which create the opportunity. The hazard adjustments process within hours of the disappearances. Completion followed by compensation. It's clean. It's efficient. It's the kind of financial trail that hides inside policy. No envelope of cash, no coded transfers, just routine language masking repetition. And routine is the most dangerous disguise of all. It numbs oversight. It dulls suspicion. It makes wrongdoing look like payroll.
The guard can't authorize his own payments. They require sign-off. routing through touring administration, through management oversight, through someone with broader authority than a corridor checkpoint. The approvals don't look rushed. They don't look panicked. They look normal. That's what makes them unsettling. Nothing in the chain feels improvised. It feels prepared. Like this wasn't built in a moment of impulse, but constructed patiently, city by city.
The approvals trace back to the tour manager. Digital signatures, time-stamped authorizations. Nothing labeled illegal. Nothing explicitly suspicious. Just a pattern of dual participation. 2 roles, 2 keys turning at the same time. The guard controls the door. The manager controls the permission. It isn't a loud conspiracy. It's structured cooperation. And the structure holds across every city on the map. Cooperation doesn't need conversation when roles are understood. It only needs timing.
The Encore is designed to overwhelm the senses. Lights sweep outward, not inward. Smoke clouds the edges. The final chorus stretches longer than expected. The building shakes. And in that moment, no one is counting heads. No one is checking whether the girl beside them is still there. You assume separation is temporary. You assume she'll catch up. The show makes that assumption for you. It gives you a script. Scream, film, sing, and leave. It doesn't include search. The performance doesn't just entertain. It conditions.
Crowds don't think, they react. When the music surges and the lights flare, attention narrows. People focus forward, toward the stage, toward the noise. Everything else fades into the edges. If someone shifts sideways, towards a corridor, toward a restricted door, it doesn't trigger an alarm. It feels like part of the natural flow of the event. Just another person moving through space. And when that movement is guided by uniformed security, it feels even more normal. Authority makes it invisible. The distraction isn't accidental. It's part of the design of every show. And someone figured out exactly how to step through that design at the precise second that no one thinks to look away from the stage.
Tours move like clockwork. After the encore, road cases roll in disciplined lines. Cables coil with mechanical precision. Trucks load with practiced efficiency. Freight becomes priority. Speed matters. Efficiency matters. The building must be cleared for the next event. The noise shifts from music to machinery. It feels like the night is ending, like nothing extraordinary has happened. The crowd filters out. Parking lot empties. The city exhales.
And inside that movement, equipment shifts between containers. Weight distributions change, not dramatically, just enough to register when compared across 11 stops. Freight is trusted, but trust is a powerful shield. Containers are sealed, manifests are signed, and when a convoy pulls away under traffic control, no one imagines it might be carrying more than speakers and lighting rigs. The road becomes part of the concealment, and distance becomes the insulation.
A container labeled audio isolation unit fluctuates in weight between cities. Not wildly, not enough to cause immediate alarm, but enough to repeat, enough to form a pattern when lined up across months. The difference isn't dramatic, it's subtle. And subtlety is what the entire operation depends on. A slight imbalance, a few £100, the kind of discrepancy that disappears inside industrial margins.
The fluctuations align precisely with the disappearance nights. The container travels without inspection, protected by touring clearance. It crosses state lines without question. When analysts graph the weight shifts against the timeline of missing persons, the line doesn't spike, it pulses. Regular, controlled, measured. And that regularity begins to look intentional, not desperate, not chaotic, just intentional.
Certain freight loads detour before reaching the next venue. Secondary depots, private lots, minor paperwork justifications about storage and timing adjustments. No dramatic deviation, just slight bends in the route. Bends that would never be noticed without hindsight. On paper, they read like efficiency, shaving minutes off delivery windows, balancing traffic flow, avoiding congestion. But repetition strips away innocence. These detours cluster in the same cities where women vanish. They occur within hours of encores. They feel less like convenience and more like choreography. A pause before the convoy continues forward. A quiet stop where something can shift from one layer of infrastructure to another.
The reroutes cluster near cross-border corridors. They don't scream crime, they whisper opportunity. If you wanted to move something quietly from one jurisdiction to another, you wouldn't improvise. You'd build it into logistics. You'd make it look like efficiency. And that's exactly what it looks like. A system using its own momentum as camouflage. A truck that carries amplifiers by day and something else by night. No flashing lights. No hidden compartments like a movie. Just paperwork and access. And when infrastructure hides movement, it does it without drama. And it does it without witnesses.
Embedded in routing communication is a neutral name, G-Consult. It appears in email chains and vendor confirmations, always in the background. Not the sender, not the headline. Just the quiet CC that no one questions. The kind of administrative ghost that exists to soften friction. It signs off on storage coordination, on timing adjustments, on logistical clarifications that seem routine. But the alias appears only in cities where women disappear. It never shows up in tour stops without incident. That absence becomes louder than its presence.
Financial tracing links the alias to a secured compound near Guadalajara, Mexico. Incremental transfers follow the freight movement like a shadow following the light. Small amounts, regular intervals, enough to maintain something, and enough to sustain something. The transfers don't spike, they hum. They resemble operational maintenance rather than a payout, which suggests permanence, structure, a location that exists beyond a single night. The aliases don't point to a person yet, but it points somewhere, and somewhere means destination. Somewhere means endpoint.
The case shifts from local tragedy to international possibility, not confirmed, but no longer theoretical. The map expands beyond state lines, beyond domestic jurisdiction. The red pins no longer stop at the border. Investigators begin tracing freight lines south, watching how highways funnel toward crossing points. What once felt like isolated disappearances now feels like supply lines. The realization lands slowly. The arenas were never the final destination. They were the starting point.
Interpol liaison channels open quietly. Information moves through secure networks. Tour still rolls north to south like any other, but investigators now look beyond arenas, beyond hotels, toward borders, toward compounds, toward destinations that don't advertise concerts. The structure suggests organization beyond two men. Logistics this smooth rarely terminate at a single handler. They terminate at hierarchy, at someone waiting on the other end of the route. And that possibility changes the scale of the case entirely.
Madison's phone reconnects for 20 seconds near the next tour stop. It isn't a message. It's proof of life. Brief, fragile, real. It's the first crack in the narrative that the women were immediately erased. It suggests movement, containment, time. That signal becomes oxygen inside a suffocating case. Investigators replay the timestamp, measure the tower radius, calculate possible travel windows. The signal doesn't say where she is, but it says she's somewhere. And somewhere is enough to keep the hunt alive.
The signal reframes everything. If the phone traveled with the tour, the women may have too. It means the pipeline isn't hypothetical, it's active. And active systems can be intercepted. The timing aligns with freight departure, with the convoy schedule, with the narrow hours between loadout and departure. The phone wasn't destroyed, it slipped through containment for a breath of network coverage. That breath confirms structure, confirms sequence, confirms that whatever is happening, it's happening in motion.
About 6'2", heavy set, not carrying it.
Federal agents stand near the stage wing before doors open. Not in seats, not near the merch booth. In the scene between the spectacle and the shadows. They blend with crew, clipboards, headsets, neutral clothing. They study body language instead of performance. They map sight lines instead of lyrics. The crowd fills in, the lights dim, and the investigators wait, knowing the pattern only needs to be repeated once more.
They don't watch the band, they watch the manager and the guard. They watch posture, timing, positioning. They watch where eyes travel during the encore. They watch who moves when volume peaks. Confirmation is not dramatic, it's quiet. A nod, a shift, a door unlocking at precisely the wrong second. They aren't here to interrupt the show. They're here to document the choreography.
The manager's gaze narrows toward a section of the crowd. It's subtle, controlled, intent hidden inside routine. He doesn't point. He doesn't signal openly. He simply shifts attention. And that shift travels. It moves through the corridor like a ripple. In the middle of the noise, he stands perfectly still, calm in a storm engineered for chaos. To anyone watching casually, he's just overseeing production. But to the agents positioned in the wing, his stillness feels deliberate, focused, directed. The crowd surges toward the stage, unaware that someone is scanning not for applause, but for vulnerability.
The guard shifts position. The override triggers. The corridor opens at peak volume. The pattern confirms itself. Lights explode outward. The crowd screams. And inside the wing, access changes. The sequence is clean, practiced, repeated. And this time, someone is documenting every second of it. The guard doesn't hesitate, doesn't look over his shoulder. He moves like a man who has done this enough times that muscle memory replaces doubt. The door opens for exactly as long as it needs to. No longer, no shorter. Timing that precise only comes from rehearsal. And rehearsal means intent.
They don't arrest. Not yet. Grabbing one link could fracture the chain and scatter what they're trying to find. The instinct to move is strong, to break the rhythm mid-beat, to drag someone out of the shadows while the music still shakes the walls. But strategy demands patience. The goal is not spectacle, it's recovery. They need to know where the route ends, who waits at the other side of the corridor. If they move too soon, the machinery could dissolve overnight, and the women could disappear beyond reach.
They need the full network, the freight, the alias, the endpoint, the people waiting on the other side of the border. If the manager and the guard are only middle operators, cutting them loose too soon could bury evidence deeper. So they let the convoy move, and they follow. Surveillance units track departures. Data teams monitor financial pings. The show ends like every other night. Applause fading to road cases rolling. But beneath that routine, the investigation shifts from observation to pursuit. The hunters are no longer guessing. They're closing distance.
International coordination begins in silence. No press conference, no warning shot, just data passing through secure channels. Surveillance requests filed, border alerts prepared. The investigation widens without anyone outside the task force knowing. Names are added to watch lists, vehicles flagged for tracking. A property outside Guadalajara becomes more than an address on paper. It becomes a target under quiet review. The arena may be loud, but the real work happens in rooms where no one raises their voice.
And this is the moment the investigation shifts from observation to positioning. Analysts stop asking if the movement is real, and they start calculating how it operates. Timelines are overlaid with freight departures. Banking patterns are compared against tour stops. Travel routes are reconstructed mile by mile. What once looked like separate events begins to form a continuous chain. And chains don't stretch endlessly. They anchor somewhere. The focus now is not where the women vanished, but on where the system expects to deliver them. Because when you identify the endpoint, you don't chase the movement, you intercept it.
"11 women are missing, 11 encores, 11 cities that believe nothing bad could happen inside so much light. The stage lights burn bright as ever. The music still feels invincible. Fans cheer. Merch sells. The tour schedule updates. To the outside world, nothing has changed. Static Divide remains a headline act. The arenas still sell out. The encore still detonates into applause. And somewhere in the crowd at the next stop, someone else stands shoulder to shoulder with thousands of strangers, believing safety is guaranteed by proximity.
And the tour rolls on. Trucks loaded. Contracts honored. Applause fading into highways. The spotlight commands attention, but now, in the darkness just beyond it, investigators are watching, and the shadows are beginning to lose their protection. The machinery that once hid movement is now being mapped, timed, and traced. Somewhere beyond the border, someone believes the system is still invisible. That belief is about to be tested, because the encore may be over in Dallas, but the real performance is only beginning.
"11 women vanished inside rooms built for celebration. Inside buildings flooded with light. Inside crowds thick enough to make you believe nothing could go unnoticed. But disappearance doesn't always look violent. Sometimes it looks procedural. Sometimes it moves through doors that open because they're told to. The families still wait, still refresh phones, still replay the last known moments like they might catch something new in the frame. A shadow, a glance, a decision made in between space and two drum beats.
The pattern is no longer theory. It's architecture. A corridor, a payment trail, a freight route bending south. A name buried in logistics that doesn't belong to the stage. The tour continues, unaware that its machinery is being dissected piece by piece. And somewhere beyond the border, someone else is watching the same schedule. Not for applause, but for arrivals. The spotlight was never the danger. It was the distraction.
Next time on Last Encore, the convoy crosses state lines. Freight manifests tighten. Surveillance widens. And the question shifts from who is opening the doors to who is waiting on the other side.
A financial alias leads to Guadalajara, Mexico. A walled compound that appears on satellite imagery. And investigators begin to understand that this wasn't opportunistic. It was structured, funded, sustained. The tour manager and his guard may be the operators, but the operators have to answer to someone.
As the freight rolls south, agents prepare for something larger than 2 arrests. Because if the women are alive, they're not in arenas anymore.
The Last Encore, Episode 2, Southbound. Coming soon.